All right, thank you for joining. I think we have maybe like 35, 40 people on the call, which is awesome. Um, my name is Chris Casado. For those of you who are new to TSX, I'm the co-founder of TSX Challenge. And tonight I'm excited to share with you guys, honestly, some of the Sierra's best kept secrets. These are areas I first discovered back when I was a kid, and I've kind of been exploring different parts of the Sierra ever since. For those of you who are new to TSX Challenge, I'll just share a little bit of quick background. We take all different ages, backgrounds, and experience levels on inspirational backpacking trips through the Sierra, the Grand Canyon, and a few other locations. We've been doing this since 2011. Our goal is really to enable people who might not have the skill set or experience levels to access some of the most remote, least traveled regions of kind of our backcountry, and also to inspire people that no matter your age, background, shape, or size, you can do anything you put your mind to. If you want to learn a little bit more about TSX, you can kind of find us on our website. These are kind of the routes that we do. We have stuff that's a little bit spicy. That's going to push you outside your comfort zone. We have stuff that's great for beginners. But really, everything that we do is like a little bit unique in the terms of the destinations and locations that we operate. The Grand Canyon's being one of them, the Sierra, which we'll talk about tonight. We operate on the Lost Coast, New Mexico, and then a few of these other specialty routes that we've added more recently. Um, I will say that, a little bit about myself. I started backpacking when I was like 14, 15 years old, but I started, hanging out in the Sierra way before that. I caught my first fish in the Sierra back in like 1982. That's way back in the day. I did the John Muir Trail for the first time back in 1997. That's the 200-mile route from Yosemite to Mount Whitney. And then I've been backpacking the Sierra pretty much every year ever since. I started TSX Challenge back in 2011 as a way to open up a unique experience we had in the Clovis Fresno area where I grew up to touch more people. These are the fish I caught back in 1982. So you can see those fish never had a chance. Um, I would say though that in terms of like the areas where I like to hang out, I grew up in Clovis, and this is like an area that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Like just kind of right up against near to the Sierra. So we spent a lot of time kind of going up to the Sierra as a kid. While I was living in Clovis, there was actually a fifth grade teacher named Mike Murphy, and Mike actually would take students and community members on this inspirational hike across the Sierra every year up until just like a couple of years ago, every year since 1983. And I was one of those kids. My mom did a hike with him when she was 40. My brother did a hike with him when he was like 10. My sister when she was 12. I was like 14. And the hike that we did is like this week-long hike across the Sierra to Mount Whitney. And it positively impacted pretty much just about everyone I touched. So we started TSX Challenge as a way to kind of like open up this unique experience to touch more people. And this is what we call our Trans Sierra Extreme Challenge. In terms of like opportunities for like talking about TSX or trips that we do organize a handful of like organized trips. If you're looking for ideas to organize people to hike with or backpack with, keep us in mind. If you're just looking for ideas for yourself or your friends or family, please use me as an open book. I want to share as much as possible so you have like a safe and enjoyable trip, either this year or in years to come, kind of exploring some of these new locations. With that in mind, uh, let me know if there's any questions. Cool. This is what we'll kind of cover. We'll talk about like a little bit what's so special about the central part of the Sierra and the areas around the JMT. We'll talk about how to access some of the most remote routes near the JMT. We'll talk about some of the hidden gems that are kind of beyond the national parks. I know, I think it was Trina or a few we were telling me that you were just recently at the national parks. We'll talk about some fresh ideas, and then we'll talk gear, logistics, safety, and then I'll just share a few of my favorite destinations that maybe you can put them on your list and start doing more research. Um, and please ask questions. So ask lots of questions. I'm gonna start with a question to you guys though. What's so special about like, the High Sierra, the central part of the Sierra here? See if anyone wants to jump in.
Just all the great alpine views and water and weather.
Absolutely. Like amazing water, weather, alpine. Anyone else?
All the lakes, all of the forest that it has, all the different wildlife. It's
Yeah,
just
it's
beautiful.
super diverse, super diverse. The changing terrain. I'm looking at the comments here. It's the one part of the country I haven't hiked yet. Well, here's the opportunity. Yeah, super diverse and varied. And when they hike other locations, you come back to the Sierra, you realize how lucky and how special it is just to like have the diversity and the water and kind of the views that we have here. Um, there's a few of the things that, from my perspective, like if you've been to the Sierra, you have like these two roads that go across it. In the north, you have Taiga Pass, which goes to Yosemite. On the south, you have, the road that goes near Bakersfield, like Isabella across. But in between, you have like this, it's like 200 miles of like uninterrupted wilderness, which is, it's pretty remarkable. Like to have that much wilderness where you, like no cars, no traffic, no way to cross except for on foot. Now, a lot of people, when they think about the Sierra, they think about, they think about like, Yosemite. And how many of you have been to Yosemite or Yosemite Valley, I'm guessing? Seeing a
Yeah.
couple hands go up, three, four, five. There we go. Yeah, it's a pretty happening place. Um, so Yosemite is beautiful, and if you haven't been there, the views are amazing. Like Half Dome, 8,000, 9,000 feet. When you get to the top of Half Dome, you look down into the valley. It's absolutely incredible. But on a typical like summer day, if you were to look over your shoulder, it might look like this, like lines of people coming up, and just this is probably before the new permitting system they had there. Like, there's a lot of people in the valley. Um, on the flip side, if you go to the southern part of like the Sierra, you have Mount Whitney. I'm guessing a few of you may have been to Mount Whitney. It's the highest point in the lower 48 states. We have a trip that goes up there. It's absolutely incredible. The views from the top of Mount Whitney are spectacular. This is a view looking across towards the Kauias to the west. But again, on a typical summer day, you're going to have like a lot of people up there. It's a happening place, high impact. I wouldn't really call it wilderness, especially if you're coming out from the eastern side. But you're out there, and it's a big accomplishment if you made it happen. But tonight I want to shift our attention and think about like, okay, this is the John Muir Trail. We have the Yosemite on one end, kind of Kings Canyon, Sequoia, Mount Whitney on the other end. Like, this is kind of the viewpoint of like, here's the JMT. Absolutely gorgeous, wide range of like elevation and profiles, but there's a lot of traffic on there. It's pretty hiker dense. The campgrounds can be crowded at times as you're kind of moving through it if you're on the main trail. There's permit access issues, which are kind of challenging for some people, especially if you're trying to do the full ride across. And there's a lot of social media. So there's a few places that like everyone knows and everyone goes to, and they kind of pop. So tonight I want to just share some ideas that were like off the beaten track. And I'm not sure if you've ever done like this idea of like, remember you used to have like the globes like in the old classrooms, you like would spin the globe and you'd like just put your finger on the globe and be like what's there? And I could almost think about that like with the Sierra. Like, what if you got off the beaten path with the Sierra and just like picked a random point and thought about like what's there? So on the north you have Yosemite with 5 million visitors. On the south you have Sequoia Kings Canyon with just over 1 million visitors, roughly speaking, a year. But like, what if you just picked a dot? And this dot is actually located uh, in John Muir Wilderness, and it's Red Mountain. Red Mountain gets less than 100 visitors a year, but it's one of the most beautiful, incredible views for like an outsized, for a small mountain like this, small mountain, 12,000 feet. At 12,000 feet, you're about 15 miles deep into the Sierra. And this is a hiker's hike, nothing technical. You can make it to the top of Red Mountain. You have this incredible view of Goddard Canyon from the top of Red Mountain. And honestly, one of the best 365 views I think you can have from like a 12,000 foot mountain. This is what it looks like from the top of Red Mountain, which is in John Muir Wilderness. So you can kind of see this Mount Goddard in the background there, but peaks as far as you can see. And the best part is there's really no people out there. When you go up to some of these other peaks outside of, the JMT, you have the whole mountains to yourself and pretty much hardly any people for miles. This is kind of a Google Maps 3D kind of view of the Sierra. Just to give you some perspective, this is the JMT coming up the backside, which goes through Evolution Valley. In the foreground, is anyone familiar with this mountain range here in the foreground? What this might be called? All right, so this might be one takeaway for tonight. This is called the LeConte Divide. So if you want to do some research on the LeConte Divide, I call this is like a big kid's playground for me. This is like there's like 12 and 13,000 foot peaks, and you can kind of like go into them, go out of them. There's lakes throughout it, and there's not a lot of people out there, but just off the GMT here. Red Mountain sits on the LeConte Divide, less than 100 visitors a year. And in addition, you not only do you have that, but you have like all these other beautiful places. You have Red Mountain Basin, you have Bench Valley, you have Black Cat Basin, which sits a little bit farther to the south. Sitting behind it, you have Mount Goddard. And then you have trails that kind of come in and out. All of these trails are going to be coming, I'll kind of give you the lay of the land, how they're going to get there. But trails that work your way in and work your way out, you can hop on the JMT, hop off the JMT, and start to make different multi-day loops out of like this LeConte Divide area. What these areas might look like, you have Red Mountain Basin. This is Helfershire Lake and Red Mountain Basin. Bench Valley. This is probably one of my favorite lakes in the entire Sierra, which is Schoolmarm Lake and Bench Valley. Black Cat Basin, which is kind of to the south of the LeConte Divide. And the Goddard Canyon, which is on the backside, which would parallel to Evolution Valley. And then at Mount Goddard, we actually, I've summited Mount Goddard many times. It's a 13,500 mountain. It's like 10 miles of off-trail hiking. But if you make it to the top, you can literally almost see almost every high peak in the Sierra from the top of Mount Goddard. It looks a little bit like this. Oops. There you go. So here we are. Again, you can kind of see just the stillness and beauty of the Sierra from this high peak. And now this is looking back towards the Whitney Group there, the distance. So from my perspective, what's so special? Well, there's not a lot of people in the central part of the Sierra. This is rugged, kind of untamed spaces, but really it's accessible to anyone who's like mentally tough, motivated, and has a positive attitude. Like if you want to make it happen, you can still hike into there. I'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions, and we'll talk about kind of how to access some of these areas and some of the other locations. But any questions? And thank you to those of you who just joined us here tonight. Kind of welcome to the event. Cool. All right, jump in and ask questions if you have them, please. Let's talk about how to access some of this stuff. So the John Muir Trail, again, we have, this is one view where you have, going to the north, you have Highway 41 from the Fresno Clovis area, which is where I grew up. If you're coming from the Bay Area, you might have a different perspective on how you're going to get there. If you're going down to the southern part of the JMT, maybe you're going to take Highway 180 or Highway, let's just call it Highway 180 down to Kings Canyon, Sequoia National Park, or some other cutoff off of 190, off of 99 towards Visalia. But what's missing here is actually this other beautiful location, which is this other beautiful access point, which is Highway 168. If you've never heard of Highway 168, again, kind of write it down. This will take you right into the middle part of the John Muir Trail and kind of dump you off like at the heart of it. So instead of hiking 100 miles from the south or 100 miles from the north, you can kind of access it from the western side now pretty easily. And Highway 168 is going to take you roughly 90 miles from Fresno Clovis area down to the back near Edison Florence Lake. And on the way, there's a lot of great places to see. There's like two seasonal roads that kind of splits. One goes to the north, one goes to more kind of to the east. There's waterfalls. There's giant sequoia trees. There's hot springs. Even if you're just looking for like a day hike or like a place to go explore, take the truck, take the bike, you can put Highway 168 on the map. And this will get you pretty close to the JMT with all the beauty and the things that go around it. Getting back there, you're going to be going over Kaiser Pass. And when Kaiser Pass first opens after a big snow year, it might look like this. And you're going to drop into, this is the San Joaquin River drainage, looking back towards Ansel Adams Wilderness and Yosemite. This is like Banner Ritter Peaks in the background. There's a lot of attractions off of Highway 168. You have Rancheria Falls, which is just a couple miles hike off the road. You have the McKinley Grove, which you can literally get up and close and personal with, which is like our own private giant sequoia grove. And then you have some beautiful hot springs. This is Mono Hot Springs on the right here. Cool. Addition, so how else can we orient ourselves around this area? So there's a couple major reservoirs here. Southern California Edison manages like a large hydroelectric project, which connects Edison, Huntington, Shaver Lake, Florence Lake as well. And then PG&E manages the other two, which is Wishon and Courtright reservoirs, which are down to the south. This is going to kind of inform you because around this area, like the central part of the Sierra, just off the JMT, there's a ton of wilderness that a lot of people just don't always appreciate. On the north, you have Ansel Adams Wilderness, you have Kaiser Wilderness. These are designations that are kind of just below a national park, managed by the Forest Service instead, but still have like some beautiful areas to kind of explore. And I'll talk a little bit about these. You have Dinky Lakes Wilderness, and then Monarch Wilderness farther to the south. And then here you can see the JMT kind of cutting along the backside. So if you're looking at these different types of wilderness, I think this is my perspective, of course, just my opinion and my view. There's kind of three different levels of wilderness. There's like, and this would really depend on like your appetite for like how wild you want to be. There's like wilderness, which is nice, where I might take my kids when they were younger. There's wilderness, which is like pretty good, which is like access to like people and locations. And then there's like wilderness, like holy, like you're really out there on your own. And we'll talk about a few of those locations. From my perspective, like the first level wilderness is like uh, beginner friendly, I would say. You can put together like 40 to 20-mile loops on pretty good trails. Not a lot of people out here. This is like Kaiser and Dinky Lakes Wilderness. There's good fishing, great scenery, and there's access to services if you need it. So if you had to bail within the day, it rains, something happens, and you want to get out, you can quickly kind of get back to your car and start working back into get help if needed. You would access these locations via Shaver Lake or Huntington Lake, which are kind of your two main points to put in. This is kind of on the western side of the Sierra here. Here's a view of Kaiser Wilderness, and if you wanted to put together a loop, you can get out yourself to George Lake, which is one of my favorites out there. The route out there is pretty moderate, just about 1,500, 1,000 feet, roughly speaking, of elevation gain and loss over, roughly speaking, 8 miles, 9 miles round trip. So great day hikes if you have families out there. Dinky Lakes Wilderness, which is a little bit farther to the south, you can access this via Courtright Reservoir or Shaver Lake. And you can put together many different types of loops out in Dinky Lakes Wilderness. You can see there's lots of little lakes that are relatively easy to access. This is the view from the highest point, Three Sisters, looking out into like this gorgeous wilderness area. And if you wanted to, you could actually put together like a multi-day, multi-night loop where you hit 10 different lakes over 30 miles within Dinky Lakes Wilderness, which would be pretty nice. Um, the next level of wilderness I would call like a little bit more advanced, and this is like JMT friendly wilderness. So if you want to get back off of Highway 168, it will take you all the way back to Edison and Florence Lake, where you kind of have this little star back here. And this is just going to bring you just a few miles from the John Muir Trail. You can take a ferry across the lake. Within 4 or 5 miles of hiking, you're on the JMT. And then you can start going north or south, right from kind of the heart of the JMT and kind of exploring in different areas. One of the areas you could explore, just an example, would be like Mott Lake. And I will say there's hundreds of amazing lakes. You can, everyone might have their own favorite. This is just one that's just off the trail. If you pick up the map, you can find many, many more. But I would encourage you to like pick up a map and see what you can find, and hopefully maybe have some inspiration or confidence to kind of explore some of these areas just a few miles off the JMT. Mott Lake, you would again kind of get to the JMT, go north. If you wanted to, you could also create a little loop. You could do something like an Edison Florence Lake loop, which you're gonna hop on Edison, hike to the south over past Lake Marie. I think it's Selden Pass, I believe, from here, and then hop back down to Florence Lake. This would be a kind of the elevation profile for like a multi-night loop from Edison to Florence Lake. And then there's like the third level wilderness. I would call this like this is like a little bit more challenging. And here you're going to be like 1 or 2 days removed from the John Muir Trail. These are going to be more primitive or off-trail routes only. You may require some off-trail travel, and there's really not a lot of people out there. And so it really depends. This is where we spend most of our time. Is kind of like this like a little bit more challenging to get to, a little bit more challenging to access wilderness. And I would call this like John Muir Wilderness, Monarch, and kind of Kings Canyon adjacent areas. This is a view from, again, LeConte Divide and Mount McGee in the background. And that might have areas like this. This is where we spend our time. So we have 3 different routes that we do out there. One is Helfershire Lake and the Helfershire, we call it Helfershire Challenge that we do. Another one is Tehipite Valley. And if you've never heard of Tehipite Valley, you're not alone. I backpacked this year for more than 20 years. I'd never heard of it. Finally, I was introduced to it. Crazy enough, it's only like 60 miles from Clovis, where I grew up, about the same distance as Yosemite is from Clovis. It looks a lot like Yosemite, but it has no people. It has this sheer, the largest dome in the Sierra, which is Tehipite Dome, which is a 3,500-foot sheer rise from the valley floor to the top. One of the most incredible places to visit, but one of the most difficult to access places to visit because the trails are not well maintained. But again, kind of our 3 areas we like to go to, like Helfershire, Tehipite Valley, and then Mount Goddard is one of my favorites as well. The route we do to Mount Goddard is like 5, 6 nights out there, roughly 50 miles, roughly speaking, and about 10 miles of off-trail travel. I'll pause for a moment. and see if there's any questions. I'll check the chat here as well. Story behind Tehipite, Jessica was asking. The story behind Tehipite is, well, it's I would almost call it like a forgotten Yosemite. Difficult to access. It's 50 miles just to get to the valley floor. The trails are not well maintained. The area is not well known, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Waterfalls cascading in, and pretty much all you could love. Linda, did you have a question or comment?
Oh no, I was just trying to figure out
Okay,
how to use whatever we're doing.
all good, all good.
Okay.
Um, cool. Any more questions, ideas about kind of these wilderness areas that we just talked about? Ansel Adams, Dinky, Kaiser, John Muir Wilderness. I'm gonna switch gears and talk a little bit about gear and safety in terms of like backpacking, and then we'll just give you a small snapshot. Hopefully, this just kind of what's the idea, what's the appetite to do more research or to do learn more. Um, so for the trips that we organize, we make it really easy for people to start backpacking. We take care of the permits. If you need a backpack, sleeping bag, pad, or tent, we provide this for you. We take care of all the group gear, all the food, cooking. We coordinate transportation to and from the Clovis area. So all you really need to do is show up with your personal items and be kind of ready to hike. Um, the items that you would need would be if you're going to be hiking this on your own, would be like a 60-liter backpack or better. That'll get you through a multi-night backpacking trip in the Sierra. For sleeping bags, you want something rated at least 20-degree Fahrenheit or better. And I see a couple of questions coming in about Tehipite and Mount Goddard. And yes, I'm going to get back to you guys in a second, and I'll share some of those routes and those details. Absolutely. Um, for footwear coming in, we usually end up using trail runners. The reason we go with trail runners, we go with trail runners with a lot of mesh on the outside because we're typically hiking through streams, especially early in the season. And it's great just to like get comfortable hiking in wet feet, let the water come in. We keep hiking, let the water go right back out, and just like get used to kind of that rotation. We've been generally training. I say 80% of the people that backpack with us backpack with trail runners, maybe 20% still with like more of a thick, heavy boot. Another question coming in, have I encountered bears in the area? And the answer is I have seen bears in Tehipite Valley, but the other areas typically not. The reason is I like to go backpacking when there's less people. So a lot of these locations, like not frequently visited, not a lot of people. And so there's usually not a lot of bears or not a lot of bear interaction. If you want to see a bears, you want to go to places with lots of people, go to Yosemite. Like that's a great place to find bears or Tahoe. So less people, less encounters with bears, and that's kind of how we like it. In fact, we've never had a bear come into our camp since I've been backpacking since 2011, which is pretty awesome. Um, One had a question on best apps for offline GPS to follow routes. We like to use Gaia. It's one of the ones that probably most of our guides use. Um, let's talk about logistics. Go ahead. John, you had a question?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I just recently did a 5-day trip, and yeah, Gaia is the only thing that worked for me.
Awesome. Cool.
So yeah, highly recommend. And I didn't even have the paid version; it was just the free one. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
works
I
pretty well.
second that.
Thank you. Let's talk. I'm gonna switch gears and talk about logistics. I think I'll maybe collect some of the Q&A here at the end to make sure you guys get the additional information you need. So we typically start in the Fresno Clovis area for our trips. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive to usually most of these starting points, trailheads, maybe 3 hours at most. Which is also great because you don't get a lot, if you're from the Bay Area or Southern California, this is some of the more difficult areas to access. It's a lot of driving. If you're kind of local, where I grew up, Fresno Clovis, this is like our backyard, which we love to share. We do practice leave no trace, which means we leave things as clean if not cleaner than we found them. We've hiked with a lot of people, and some people like really take leave no trace seriously and take it to the next level. We have one gentleman named Jan. We were hiking with him down the Grand Canyon, and he found this perfect swimsuit. And not only does he believe in leave no trace, he also believes in like recycling and reuse. And so when he came out backpacking with us in the Sierra, he brought it as like a swimsuit, a backup. You can again take leave no trace kind of as far as you like. What I would say is in our trips, we try and like hike at our own pace. If you're a fast hiker, you stop at certain checkpoints. If you're a slow hiker, you stop at you take your breaks on the trail. The main thing is like everyone wants to feel comfortable and safe when they're out there together. Um, cool. Any questions on gear logistics? That was kind of a quick gear logistics safety talk, but we can touch more based on that if there's more questions.
Hey,
I have a
Chris.
question.
Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure they might vary from trip to trip, but in general, how large are the groups that you take?
Yeah, generally speaking, they're like maybe six to 12 is pretty typical range.
Okay,
Sometimes
thanks.
it might be 4 or 5. Sometimes on the longer Trans Sierra trips that we do uh, up to 15, including 2 guides. Was there someone else that had a question?
Yeah, I have one. Given that these are less traveled trails, and I know you probably track your routes with the Gaia app, but how do you navigate like going over a ridge and that access point is no longer there because of a rock slide or something like that?
Mm,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a good question. There are some known like areas that I guess I've explored, so we
Mm,
kind of know them well. For example, in the LeConte Divide, there's like 4 major passes: Hell for Sure, Gunsight, Confusion, and Valor Pass. And I've been over all of them. Um, there are some that are more challenging. We've literally invented some of our own routes, and so you
mm,
have to have patience, I would say, and be willing to turn around if it doesn't feel safe. Um, I've done that before, where I've tried to go for a route, it got too cold, it got too late, so we came back down. So just having the flexibility to like make that adjustment and make the call is probably important. In terms of like being able to like look at a location and get from point A to point B, the benefit is when you're up in the high country, like you can see everything. Like you can read the top of map and then you can see across the valley or you can see across the basin where all the peaks are defined. Unlike maybe backpacking in the Appalachians where like it's all trees and you need to like have a good sense of bearing. Up in the Sierra, you can tell east and west and north pretty quickly when you're up above the tree line, and so it's a little bit easier to navigate. Hopefully, that answers your question.
yeah.
So I understand trail miles are not the same as route miles, but typically, how many miles a day are you targeting on some of these trips?
Yeah, it really depends. On our Trans Sierra trips, we're doing like 8 to 10 miles a day. On some of the other trips, we're doing a little bit less, but I'd say 6 to 10 is a pretty good range, depending on like the pacing and the group. Usually, we're on the trail between 6 and 8, and off the trail between 3 and 5.
Great.
Yeah, but yeah, the miles are all different. If you're going uphill, downhill, everything's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Great
understood.
questions. Um, I'll go ahead and this is going to be a small slideshow then of like some of my favorite places. So if you want, if something jumps out, feel free to ask a question. But again, I'm just going to share like a few locations that really inspire me, and maybe they might inspire you or challenge you to kind of do more research. Again, just to kind of whet the appetite. I spend a lot of time at Shaver Lake. Shaver Lake is kind of my base point from jumping into like the central part of the Sierra near the JMT. It's about an hour outside of Fresno. Oftentimes we'll do like a pack check there or kind of welcome people there. And then maybe we'll transport up to the trailhead, which is this view happens to be of Courtright Reservoir. Courtright Reservoir is around 8,000 feet elevation, beautiful, high granite, absolutely gorgeous. This will take us into like John Muir Wilderness area, Kings Canyon access points near the JMT. Excuse me, we'll use this if we're headed into Mount Goddard area, or a little bit to the south, we'll use some area called the Rancheria Trailhead near Wishon Reservoir to access Tehipite Valley. And then we'll use, again, more Courtright, Maxon Trailhead to access the Hellfish area. But some of my favorite lakes, this is called Schoolmarm Lake. This is in Bench Valley, area called Bench Valley. Disappointment Lake, an area called Red Mountain Basin. Never disappoints. Both of these are on your Hellfisher Loop. This is a view of the kind of the LeConte Divide up on the ridgeline with the beautiful view of Mount Goddard in the background. Behind us here, this is Mount Hutton, 12,000 foot peak. I think we talked about Red Mountain earlier, which is pretty nice. Bench Valley, there's one day when we're hiking through Bench Valley where we literally pass about a dozen different High Sierra lakes over the course of like 5 or 6 hours, which is pretty awesome. Like they're tucked in there, nice and tight and beautiful. This is a view of the Goddard Divide and people hiking in front of it. Hellfisher Lake here. Red Mountain Basin. This is, everything that we do when we are off trail, we're hiking as a team. So everything that we do as a kind of organization is definitely team oriented. If we're gonna go do something big, we're gonna be like working as a team the whole way through, waking up early in the morning. You kind of see the sun rising here as we're like working our way up this talus and scree. Oftentimes, if you're off trail, this is a route towards Mount Goddard. There can be large boulder fields. As we make our way up and kind of work our way up to what we call the southeast chute, this is a view looking back down towards the Ionian Basin, which is honestly one of the most wild, otherworldly type views, experiences that you can have in the Sierra, as in the Ionian Basin. There are great fishing opportunities if you're up there. The golden trout in Martha Lake are pretty spectacular. The views of Goddard Canyon. I remember hiking back there a couple years ago where it was a bunch of people from California, and they're like, I lived in California my entire life. I had no idea this even existed. So you're in this area that's pristine. You're the only people in the canyon. It's gorgeous, and it's great to have something special like that all to yourself. This is the wall that we use when we go over between Goddard Canyon and Black Cat Basin. So we kind of just create a route that goes right over the ridge line. And here's a view back into Black Cat Basin. Farther to the south, there's an area called Crown Valley. Crown Valley is your entrance to like the Monarch Wilderness and the Monarch Divide. This is the Monarch Divide here in the background here, which sits on the other end of like Kings Canyon, kind of falls behind that. Or this is in Kings Canyon, I should say, in Kings Canyon. What you can't see here is right here, this is Tehipite Dome. I think I showed you the dome earlier. Right here, this is the dome. It's kind of hiding in plain sight. And we have a trip that actually goes out to the dome. It's like hiking out to Half Dome, but here we're going just the top. You can see the kind of the ridge line here. A little bit technical to make it to the top, so we typically will just hike out to the ledges of Tehipite Dome. But in general, I would say like all of these locations in the central part of the Sierra, as you kind of work your way off some of the more traveled routes, are absolutely beautiful, absolutely inspiring. The great opportunities to take your friends out there, take families out there, and hopefully, if you're an experienced backpacker, you can start working on some new ideas to try something new. These areas have had an incredibly positive impact on me and my family and many of our community over the last several years, and I hope they can have an equally positive impact on you and your friends and family and give you that inspiration that can last for a lifetime. So that I think I'll pause for a second. I'll share just a few things and I'll take some Q&A. So of the roughly of all our summer experiences, I think we have probably 5 or 6 trips left with some space in it. If you were interested in hiking with us in 2026, we'd love to have you with us. There's a couple dates open for Tehipite Valley. One, we just had cancellation, so we have a spot on the 21st. A couple spots open on a few of our Hell for Sure trips. And our Mount Goddard trip, we have one trip with some space available in late August. We'd love you to have you with us. We're primarily booking 2027 at the moment, but a few spots left for 2026. There's also that Trans Sierra Extreme Challenge route that we have, which is the week-long hike across the Sierra to Mount Whitney. This is our flagship route, kind of our most popular. TSX actually stands for Trans Sierra Extreme Challenge. When I first started TSX, we just planned on doing one trip, one route, and that was it. So it was Trans Sierra Extreme Challenge. Then we've kind of added many more. We also have a route that's up in Yosemite. This one is full for this year, but we go up to something called the Triple Divide Challenge. And this is accessing a part of Yosemite, which is on the Clark Range, which not many people get to see, but has some of literally the most spectacular views in Yosemite that no one ever really gets to appreciate like this. So that one is full for this year, but we're actually booking 2027 as well. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you with us. I know many of you are like, thank you, new to TSX on the call. If you'd like to join us and sign up or join a trip this week, we'd love to have you with us. You can use Beyond JMT on our website, and that will get $150 off any of our Sierra trips, good through the end of this week through Friday. All you need is like a $500 deposit. That could be for this year or for next year. We'd love to have you or friends with us. You can learn more on our website. I think right now we have 43 different Sierra trips between this year and next year on the books. So lots of dates that run from roughly mid-June through mid-September, and we'd love to have you with us. And then we also have a number of upcoming events as well. So next week, we'll be talking about Mount Whitney in more detail. On the 30th, we'll be talking about backpacking the Grand Canyon. And on the 7th, we'll be talking a little bit more about the Lost Coast. So if any of this work, you're interested in learning more, we'd love to have you with us. And where can you learn more information? On our website, tsxchallenge.com. There's itineraries, videos, links, and checklists. Or you can send me an email or shoot me a text. I'm literally answering questions year-round for people who have are planning their own trips or have their ideas. And again, use me as the open book. Happy to share what we can. So with that, I will pause for a second and see if there's any questions.